Well, hello there. Here we are with another book. This one, Tim Winston, The Shepherd's Hut. So I started this one with a bit of trepidation. I've read a couple of Tim Winston's books, Cloud Street, Dirt Music, and that crazy book, Breath. And so I don't really love it's not his writing. He writes beautifully, very Australian. It's sometimes the subject matter. I don't think that it really resonates with me. I expect to love it and then sometimes don't. So I approached this one with a bit of trepidation. The reason why I keep going back to Tim Winston stuff though is because he wrote the liner notes for Midnight Oil's album 10,000 Watt RSL, I think it's probably called. So it's about their live, it's an album of their live concerts as they sort of came back later in their career. And I loved it. I loved the way he wrote. I loved the way he captured the feeling of being an Australian and the music and the energy of Midnight Oil. So I keep on going back to his stuff, hoping that I'm going to get that same feeling. And yet his books are not really as uplifting as something like that. So I approached this one, a little bit scared. And it starts off, the entire book is written in the voice of Jaxie, a young man who comes from a situation of awful domestic violence, and it's about his story and hopefully his story towards love as he goes to seek out the young girl that he's in love with, and even that's troubled in itself, the type of relationship it is, which, spoiler alert, you need to read the book to find out a little bit more about that. So but because it's written in his voice, of course, there's a lot of me, yous, gunna, all of that sort of stuff. And so it's quite jarring when you first start. But what Tim Winston does really beautifully, within a really short period of time, you've forgotten all of that and you're just with the kid, you're reading it and no longer judging his, vernacular, as it were. And yeah, it's very Aussie, but you put everything aside. I love also the way all of the conversation, there's not a lot of conversation in the book, but when there is, it's just written as a start of a new paragraph. There's no quotation marks and not of that hello, how are you, he said type stuff. And so it makes for a really interesting narrative. It really keeps it moving really quickly as you move from situation to situation, and it turns out to be a real page turner. I didn't anticipate that. It's almost a bit of a thriller by the end, which is really cool. So this last couple of chapters I just couldn't put it down because I was in quite a rush to find out where we were going to end up. And I can't find anything written by Tim Winston about this book, but I think I'd love to. It's a kind of book I'd love to read with a book club, so you can discuss what next, what now, and is it ultimately a book about love and redemption, or are we headed down a very different path by the end? It reminds me a little bit of that Nick Cave book, When the Ass Saw the Angel, which was, by the way, almost unreadable to me. My vocabulary is not large enough to read Nick Cave, but it reminds me of that storytelling and that almost, well, I suppose because this has got a priest in it, but almost a religious connotation all the way through. So it's well worth a read. I picked this one up in one of the cheap bookstores and it wasn't particularly expensive, and it's worth reading just to hear the way Tim is able to create this character in Jaxie, and also to have a think about what in this current climate of domestic violence and this generational violence that's perpetrated in this country, at least, it's worth a read with that backdrop as well, because it's become quite topical, especially, in this last week we've had an awful thing happen in this country. And so that disturbing generational pattern that's passed down, and it leaves you wondering how this kid's going to turn out. So pick it up if you can. Tim Winston, The Shepherd's Hut. Support Australian novelists, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'd love to hear your comments if you've already read it. Okay, because I really want to talk about this one. Have a great day. Bye.